Okay, we're back. Chapter 29. Start with the curtsy and finish with the thread. Miggery Sow's luck continued. On her first day on the job as a castle servant, she was sent to deliver a spool of thread to the princess. Mind, said the head of the serving staff, a dour woman named Louise. She is royalty, so you must make sure you curtsy. How's that? Shouted Mig. You must curtsy, shouted Louise. Gore, said Mig. Yes'm. She took the spool of thread from Louise and made her way up the golden stairs to the princess's room, talking to herself as she went. Here I am, off to see the princess, me, Miggery Sow, seeing the princess up close and personal like. And first off, I must curtsy because she is the royalty. At the door to the princess's room, Mig had a sudden crisis of confidence. She stood a moment, clutching the spool of thread and muttering to herself. Now, how did that go? She said. Give the princess the thread, then give her a curtsy? No. First the curtsy, then the thread. That's it. Gore. That's right. That's the order. Start with the curtsy and finish with the thread. She knocked at the princess's door. Enter, said the pea. Mig, hearing nothing, knocked again. Enter, said the pea, and Mig, still hearing nothing, knocked yet again. Maybe, she said to herself, the princess ain't home. But then the door was flung wide open, and there was the princess herself staring right at Miggery Sow. Gore, said Mig, her mouth hanging open. Hello, said the pea. Are you the new serving maid? Have you brought me my thread? Curtsy I must, shouted Mig. She gathered her skirts, dropped the spool of thread, stuck out a foot, and stepped onto the spool, rocked back and forth for what seemed like a long time, both to the watching princess and to the rocking Mig, and finally fell to the floor with a Miggish thud. Whoopsie, said Miggery Sow. The pea could not help it. She laughed. That's all right, she said to Mig, shaking her head. It's the spirit of the thing that counts. How's that? Shouted Mig. It's the spirit of the thing that counts, shouted Pea. Thank you, miss, said Mig. She got slowly to her feet. She looked at the princess. She looked down at the floor. First the curtsy, then the thread, Mig muttered. Pardon, said the pea. Gore, said Mig. The thread. She dropped to her hands and knees to locate the spool of thread. When she found it, she stood back up and offered it to Pea. I brought you your thread, didn't I? Oh my goodness, and we have a picture of poor Miggery Sow falling down. Do you see it? Whoopsie, said Miggery Sow. Lovely, said the princess, and she took the thread from Mig. Thank you so much. I cannot even seem to hold on to a spool of red thread. Every one I have disappears somehow. Are you making a thing? Said Mig, squinting at the cloth in Pea's hand. I am making a history of the world. My world, said the pea. In tapestry. See, here's my father the king, and he is playing the guitar because that is something he loves to do and does quite well. And here's my mother, the queen, and she is eating soup because she loves soup. Soup, gore, that's against the law. Yes, said the princess. My father outlawed it because my mother died while she was eating it. Your ma's dead? Yes, said the pea. She died just last month. She bit her bottom lip to stop from trembling. Ain't that the thing, said Mig. My mom's dead too. How old were you when she died? Bold was I, said Mig, taking a step back away from the princess. I'm sorry then. No, how old? How old were you? Shouted the pea. Not but 6, said Mig. I'm sorry, said the princess. She gave Mig a quick, deep look of sympathy. How old are you now? 12 years. So am I, said the princess. We're the same age. What's your name? She shouted. Excuse me. Miggery Sow, but most just calls me Mig. And I saw you once before, princess. You passed me on a little white horse. On my birthday it was. I was in the field with Uncle Sheep, and it was sunset time. Did I wave to you? Asked the princess. Did I wave? Shouted the pea. Yes, nodded Mig. But you didn't wave back, said the princess. I did, said Mig, only you didn't see. Someday I will sit on a little white horse and wear a crown and wave. Someday, said Mig. She put her hand up to touch her left ear. I will be a princess, too. Really, said the pea, and she gave Mig another quick look. A quick, deep look, but said nothing else. When Mig finally made her way back down the golden stairs, Louise was waiting for her. How long, she roared, did it take you to deliver a spool of thread to the princess? Too long, guessed Mig. That's right, said Louise, and she gave Mig a good clout to the ear. You are not destined to be one of our star servants. That is already abundantly clear. No, ma'am, said Meg. That's all right, though, because I am to be a princess. You? A princess? Don't make me laugh. This, reader, was a little joke on Louise's part, as she was not a person who laughed. Ever. Not even at a notion as ridiculous as Miggery Sow becoming a princess. Chapter 30. To the Dungeon. At the castle, for the first time in her young life, Meg had had enough to eat, and eat she did. She quickly became plump, and then plumper still. She grew rounder and bigger, only her head stayed small. Reader, as the teller of this tale, it is my duty from time to time to utter some hard and rather disagreeable truths. In the spirit of honesty, then, I must inform you that Meg was the tiniest bit lazy. And, too, she was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. That is, she was a bit slow-witted. Because of these shortcomings, Louise was hard-pressed to find a job that Miggery Sow could effectively perform. In quick succession, Meg had failed as a lady-in-waiting. She was caught trying on the gown of the visiting duchess. A seamstress, she sewed the cloak of a riding master to her own frock and ruined them both. As a chambermaid, she sent to clean a room, she stood open-mouthed and delighted, admiring the gold walls and floor and tapestries, exclaiming over and over again, "Gor, ain't it pretty? Gor, ain't it something then?" and then did no cleaning at all. And while Meg was trying and failing at these many domestic chores, other important things were happening in the castle. The rat in the dungeon below was pacing and muttering in the darkness, waiting to take his revenge on the princess. And upstairs in the castle, the princess had met a mouse, and the mouse had fallen in love with her. Will there be consequences? You bet. Just as Meg's inability to perform at any job well had its consequences, for finally, as a last resort, Louise sent Meg to the kitchen, where the cook had a reputation for dealing effectively with difficult help. In the cook's kitchen, Meg dropped eggshells in the pound cake batter. She scrubbed the kitchen floor with cooking oil instead of cleanser. She sneezed directly on the king's pork chop moments before it was to be served to him. "All of the good-for-nothings I have encountered," shouted the cook, "surely you are the worst, and the most cauliflower-eared good-for-nothing est. There's only one place for you, the dungeon." "Huh?" said Meg, cupping a hand around her ear. "You are being sent to the dungeon. You are to take the jailer his noonday meal. That will be your duty from now on." Reader, you must know that the mice of the castle feared the dungeon. Must I tell you that humans feared it too? Certainly, it was never far from their thoughts in the warmest months. A foul odor rose out of its darkest depths and permeated the whole castle. And in the still, cold nights of winter, terrible howls issued from the dark place, as if the castle itself were weeping and moaning. "It's only the wind," the people of the castle assured each other. "Nothing but the wind." Many a servant girl had been sent to the dungeon, bearing the jailer's meals, only to return white-faced and weeping, hands trembling, teeth chattering, insisting that they would never go back. Here's a picture of Miggery Sow. You can see she's gotten to be a lot older. And it says, "There's only one place for you, the dungeon." And worse than their whispered stories of servant girls who had been given the job of feeding the jailer, who had gone downstairs and into the dungeon, who had never been seen or heard from again. Do you believe that this will be Meg's fate? Gor, I hope not. What kind of story would this be without Meg? "Listen, you cauliflower-eared fool," shouted the cook. "This is what you do. You take the tray of food down to the dungeon, you wait for the old man to eat the food, and then you bring the tray back up. Do you think you can manage that?" "Aye, I reckon so," said Meg. "I take the old man the tray, and he eats what's on it, and then I bring the tray back up. Empty, it would be then. I bring the empty tray back up from the deep downs." "That's right," said the cook. "Seems simple, don't it? But I'm sure you'll find a way to bungle it." "Huh?" said Meg. "Nothing," said cook. "Good luck to you. You'll be needing it." She watched as Meg descended the dungeon stairs. They were the very same stairs, reader, that the mouse Despereaux had been pushed down the day before. Unlike the mouse, however, Meg had a light on the tray with food. There was a single flickering candle to show her the way. She turned on the stairs and looked back at the cook and smiled. "That cauliflower-eared, good-for-nothing fool," said the cook, shaking her head. "What's to become of someone who goes into the dungeon smiling, I ask you?" Reader, for the answer to the cook's question, you must read on. Chapter 30, A Song in the Dark. The terrible foul odor of the dungeon did not bother Meg. Perhaps that's because sometimes when the uncle was giving her a good clout to the ear, he missed his mark and delivered a good clout to Meg's nose instead. This happened often enough that it interrupted the proper workings of Meg's olfactory senses, and so it was that the overwhelming stench of despair, hopelessness, and evil was not all that discernible to her, and she went happily down the twisting and turning stairs. Gore, she shouted. It's dark, ain't it? Yes, it is, Meg, she answered herself. But if I was a princess, I would be so glittery, light-like, that there wouldn't be a place in the world that was dark to me. At this point, Miggery Sow broke into a little song that went something like this. I ain't the Princess Pea, but someday I will be. The pea, ha, he, someday I will be. Meg, as you can imagine, wasn't much of a singer, more of a bellower, really, but her little song, there was, to the rightly tuned ear, a certain kind of music. And as Meg went singing down the stairs of the dungeon, there appeared from the shadows a rat wrapped in a cloak of red and wearing a spoon on his head. Yes, yes, whispered the rat, a lovely song, just the song I've been waiting to hear. And Roscuro quietly fell into step behind Miggery Sow. At the bottom of the stairs, Meg shouted out into the darkness, Gore, it's me, Miggery Sow. Most calls me Meg, delivering your food. Come and get it, Mr. Deep Downs. There was no response. The dungeon was quiet, but it was not quiet in a good way. It was quiet in an ominous way. It was quiet in the way of small frightening sounds. There was the snail-like slither of water oozing down the walls, and from around the darkened corner there came the low moan of someone in pain. And then, too, there was the noise of the rats going about their business, their sharp nails hitting the stones of the dungeon, and their long tails dragging behind them. Through the blood and muck, reader, if you were standing in the dungeon, you would certainly hear all of these disturbing, ominous sounds. If I were standing in the dungeon, I would hear these sounds. If we were standing together in the dungeon, we would hear these sounds and we would be frightened. We would cling to each other in our fear. But what did Miggery Sow hear? That's right. Absolutely nothing. And so she was not afraid, not in the least. She held the tray up higher and the candle shed its weak light into the towering pile of spoons and bowls and kettles. Gore, said Mig, look at them things. I ain't never imagined there could be so many spoons in the whole wide world. There is much more to this world than anyone could imagine, said a booming voice from the darkness. True, true, whispered Roscuro. The old jailer speaks true. Gore, said Mig. Who said that? And she turned in the direction of the jailer's voice. We're going to go ahead and leave it off here. I am going to try to get the rest of this book read tomorrow, maybe even from my classroom at school, and get these posted so that you can watch them during spring break. I hope you're enjoying this book as much as I love it. And I hope that you will consider doing a shoebox diorama or a book report or author study on this book and other Kate DeMilo books or your favorite author. I hope you have a beautiful night. Oh my goodness, it's bedtime for Miss Castillo. Have a great night. I'll talk to you soon.